Hey guys, what is going on? Shah here today, and I'm back with another commentary. Today we're going to be looking at a 20 Freehold. This was done during a push week, so the affixes that were in place were Bursting, Volcanic, Fortified, and Beguiling, with an enchanted-centric week. So we're going to see a lot of enchanted emissaries. We're going to start off by tagging this mob with Moonfire, this enchanted, and Shadow Melding to get a quick reset so our hunter can spend a little less time damaging and knocking back that enchanted and focusing on damage, because we are opting to hero this pull. Because it's fortified, but because we're trying to push this key through this key as fast as possible, we're using hero here instead of on Sky Captain Crag, because we just know that it won't be as one-shotty and it'll be a little bit more laid back, so we won't need hero to get that boss down. So instead we decide to use it on this trash, because this trash is extremely dangerous. There's a lot of different things going on, from poison strikes to the brutal backhands to the healing balm. So all of this stuff has to be controlled, on top of also getting shattering tossed, which gets kind of annoying for the tank. So with all this going on, we decide to use as many cooldowns here. I've already blown one survival. I just used my pot there, and we are slowly kiting. Now, for this pack, when you're doing a pull this big, especially in higher keys on Guardian Druid, you want to make sure you're using everything in your toolkit that you can and rotating between and not overlapping. And what I mean by that is, I'm using Survival Instincts, and while Survival Instincts is up, I'm not kiting. But once that falls off, I'm using not only my own toolkit, like Ursol's Vortex and Typhoon, to kite and create gaps between myself and the mobs, but also calling for things like Binding Shot and making sure we're stunning things that are relatively threatening to me. Some mobs are more threatening than others, but making sure we're doing all of this without overlapping is what's going to make this pull successful. So we get it down nice and clean, we make sure Bursting wasn't rolled, and we're going to quickly mount up and get a Shroud over to Sky Captain Crag's room. So the Shroud goes up here. There is a void on the right-hand side on Enchanted Week, so we just want to be careful of that. So we're going to go right through the middle, and we're going to be handling this Enchanted pack. Now, I see that Shadow Meld is coming off a cooldown in a few seconds, so we are going to wait. We just destroyed that last pack with Hero. It's hard to tell early in the dungeon, but we're already making great time. I'm going to quickly get a reset here just again so our Hunter doesn't have to deal with that. A lot of people assume that the healer should always be doing the Enchanted, and that's not always the case. Any range character that has a spammable ability is great at this. Guardian Druids actually can handle this really well, where other tanks can't. They have to use like taunts and kind of things that are on cooldown, like Heroic Throw, for example, or they have to use like Crackling Jade Lightning is another example as well. That's inefficient. But for the Guardian Druid Galactic build, or the Galactic Guardian build, we are able to just basically spam Moonfire if needed. But because this is a fortified 20, I'm having the Hunter actually handle it. Eld does a good job at making sure he is keeping his damage up on the mobs as well as holding it back, because sometimes hunters have a hard time doing this because your pet will go in and start attacking the enchanted, which again will reflect that damage onto you. So making sure you have those macros set up appropriately. So Egg will never be handling the enchanted. I sometimes will if the pull's under control, but for the most part our range is going to be handling that if needed. So Ursol's Vortex and things like of that nature, Ring of Peace, things like that, are really good at holding the enchanted back and spending the least amount of globals possible. So just being sure that I'm getting an Ursol's Vortex down when I can, if I don't need to be cutting the mobs, and making that decision during each pull. Now for this pack, I did use Ursol's on the pack and not the enchanted, just because the Enforcers do a lot of physical damage. Their brutal backhands, if hit by them on accident, does a lot of damage, and their Shattering Toss is really just annoying, but it allows me to kite as well. So trash is down. We are now going to be doing the boss shortly. As soon as he lands, I put down 2 markers, because this is where we're going to be tanking him. Now, Crag oftentimes should be tanked in a different position where melee can line of sight, but because it's a fortified and because it's only a 20, we don't feel like we're going to need to use any kind of like LOS cheese. Now, the scaling is obviously broken with dungeons like this, especially on Tyrannical Week, so I'm not looking forward to next week. But we are going to just basically brute force our way through this boss. First phase is relatively dangerous, but we're going to just make sure everyone's stacked in melee and everyone's being topped off as soon as they get hit by his shots, and making sure we're not standing in the charge. As soon as he gets off his mount, we're going to be dragging him over to blue, and we're going to be looking out for the powder shots, and the ranger are going to be max ranging, trying to bait the poop as best as possible. Egg is playing more of a range setup for this dungeon and on this boss, because he doesn't want to be in range of powder shot. Now it does go on me there, which is super good. It's super nice when it goes on the tank, because it's based off of its physical damage, and it like my health barely got halved, and his autos aren't really doing much. Now Odie did take a big hit there. Now that's even that it's a fortified week. This boss does still hurt, but again, it's not one shot yet. So That's why we're kind of just brute forcing and just standing on between blue and green. Green is down is the direction I'm going to be kiting in case the bird starts to flying in a weird pattern where he starts coming more towards the melee and we have to start baiting, or if the poop lands on us, for example. So mainly just keeping up. This boss tanking perspective wise is super easy. It's really on the range and the melee to watch out for powder shot, making sure that they're not either going to get hit by it if they're in range, or if they're in melee that they're either going to mitigate. Mitigate basically. So rogues can use feint, which is a great ability to use, especially if they are spec'd into it. I think both of our rogues in this run were spec'd into cheat death, which is also fine, especially during fortified instances where there might be mobs that because there's so much going on, you might accidentally get slapped by something that you shouldn't be. For example, like the brutal backhand. And if you get hit by that, it could mean death, but cheat death obviously helps alleviate this. So boss goes down relatively quickly. Without hero, it does take a little bit longer, but again, because it's not really dangerous, the damage is relatively predictable. It's basically every powder shot. It's not a problem. So finish that boss. Now, this is something new I've been doing. I've seen it done a lot in hierarchies where there's a death skip here. So because I'm a night elf and because I'm a druid, I have access to several movement abilities as well as shadow meld. So I'm able to actually get a meld skip here. Normally a rogue can do this pretty easily, but so I'm able to get the meld there. The enchanted resets, and the Iron Tide is just hanging out now. So we're going to run all the way down this bridge. Most of my group has made it there already. And now we're going to be shrouding past again. Sometimes I like clearing this area. Sometimes I don't. It really depends. Lately, we've been trying a new strategy where we pull different sets of trash. You might have seen in my 15 videos that I normally pull this room, but we're going to just shroud right past it. Love having access to double rogue. You can always ring a P skip this. You can always death skip it as well if needed. So then we're going to be basically clearing this boss room. So we're making sure the little rats go down before we chain, because the little rats are just kind of obnoxious. And then we're going to make sure the traps are cleared. Guardian druids are super nice for this. We can just walk through the traps and nothing's going to punish us. It just, for whatever reason, doesn't affect us. Oftentimes we get, like, if we're affected by a root, we have to shapeshift. But in this case, we can just walk over them and just clear them up. So you see me do this here. I clear this up so my group doesn't get trapped by any chance. So making sure the tides goes down. There's nothing to kick. This is a great week when Eudora is the allied captain. There aren't any casters to kick. All you have to basically do is watch out for traps. So most tanks handle this just by kiting. For me though, my melee make sure they're not standing on the traps when they go down, and then I just soak them up. Paladins can also freedom. There's other ways to get at, if you can get out of roots, if you have anything in your toolkit to get out of roots, that works. Though druids are the best. Rest of druids can go into cat form and walk through them and nothing happens. So kind of similar concept, but I'm just obviously on a guardian druid. Clearing these yellows because we do need the boss room we need everything clear, because if they do get chained into the boss, like some overlapping abilities with bursting could be detrimental. So we're going to pull Jolly and Raoul. Now, we don't really ever pick a target. I find them both annoying. I prefer Raoul going down first. That's often kind of what we aim for, but we mainly just try to get cleave. So the biggest thing on this boss fight, the biggest thing that the tank can do is making sure you're watching out for the brews that are going down. So making sure the bosses aren't going to get crit and haste brew, and your allies do. So your teammates, your fellow group members, sometimes you. I don't try to because it's too fidgety. I hate messing around with these bosses, especially when Raoul is active with barrel smash. I've had a group wipes before because I try to get the buff by rotating in, and then barrel smash goes off and one shots everyone. So I just don't bother with it, but making sure they're getting either their crit or haste, or if it's the poison brew, making sure the bosses are sitting in it, because it counts for an insane amount of DPS onto the boss. It won't show in recount or logs, but the damage that it does to them typically is the make or break between a 1 or 2 chests. So because we have Eudora on our side, Raoul and Jolly will be stunned randomly, which is super nice. It's a little tricky with DBM if you're trying to pay attention to timers, because the timers, it'll say next barrel smash, but then it actually won't go off because Raoul's being stunned. But it's nothing you can really do about it. Also, the other thing though is when they're doing their abilities and doing different channeling and running across the room, sometimes they may snag a positive brew, and these bosses with critical strike buff are insanely dangerous, and you just want to be extremely careful and that's when you're going to want to use your big mitigation. Outside of that, like, I don't really have to roll survival instincts at all. I use Barkskin as an offensive on this fight, and I use Frenzied when needed. But outside of that, unless they get a positive buff, you really don't need to use any like big DRs like survival instincts. So bosses go down mainly because I was getting them in a lot of poison, which is something that we were aiming for. Now we're gonna get a quick reset again on this enchanted. This is why being a Night Elf is super nice. If Shadow Meld wasn't a thing, I would definitely be playing a different race because I'm not a huge fan of Night Elves. But we're gonna keep getting the reset here. We're actually doing this reset not because we really don't want to deal with this enchanted, which we don't. But Egg is AFK right now. He had something come up during this run a few times where I think we could have been close to two chesting it if we were very very aggressive with our pulls, but unfortunately we kind of had to just sit around for a second. I was trying to decide what to pull here exactly that maybe we can handle without a healer, but as soon as I pull, he does come running back in, so he was here. So we're going to be chaining this shortly. These two packs I'm about to pull, so this one and the next one, both don't really have casters in it when Eudora is when Eudora is on your side. So it's really nice to be able to chain these together. You just want to be looking out for some AoE effects. And as a druid, you want to make sure the blind rage is being soothed as often as possible. And making sure just making sure they're soothed, or you can like disorient them with in cap roar. So both of these work. That's kind of your job during these pulls. The rogues are really locking down any kind of AoE effects, any like banana barrages or whatever they're called. So making sure those are going down. So we're getting really aggressive with the pulls here. We're going to start chaining shortly, and we're going to be looking to hero on a big pull again, just because it's fortified week and some of this trash is pretty heavy on physical damage. We're using hero as obviously a quick way to get trash down and get the trash out of the way, but also as a healer cooldown, so A can just pump into me and I can just like pump myself as well with heals. So not too much to pay attention to. There is an enrage effect, but because it was on like our rogues just don't really have a huge like issue with being able to kite and stay out of range because they have extended reach. And then if it's on a hunter, it's fine. So typically blind rage is most important when it's targeting your healer. But both myself and Eld are able to soothe these, which is super, super nice. So making sure CCs go off here. I in-cap there, and he lost his blind rage. So just keep that in mind. Now, we're going to chain here, and we did hero. We heroed a little bit earlier on this pull, but I was waiting for the Crusher to pass because the Crusher just does so much damage and isn't kiteable. Now, there are things that the Crusher does that stop it from moving because, it's throwing a giant boulder, it's doing a ground smash. Now, during those points, you can kite, but realistically, you just want to be careful of these, especially on like high fortified weeks, just because their auto attacks will absolutely destroy you. And without like Incarn procs and Earth Warden, it sometimes becomes a little overwhelming. So using Binding Shot and Ursal's Vortex to our advantage, we're going to just keep pulling and keep kiting these guys back as it sees fit. But I'm comfortable enough where I go out of bear form, I can sit, I can throw out rejuves, I can throw out regrowths, I can throw out wild growths, and just keep the group up as well through bursting and helping out the healer. Which is something that I think kind of makes and breaks kind of, like regular Guardian Druids to excellent ones are the ones who are able to go out of bear form to off heal. Because it's part of our toolkit that we get to use a lot, more often than you may think. But the Guardian Druids who use this, it makes a huge difference. Like, especially in weeks like this with bursting where there's a lot of unavoidable damage. But as you saw, that Crusher was absolutely laying into me even after just a few autos. So that is why I didn't pull him even with hero up. I just didn't trust myself to have all of that on me, plus a tide, so nothing was going to be able to be kited. I did have one survivals during that last pull, but again, for me, it's just too much, and I didn't trust myself, and we're making great time. We're at 50% trash, we have 2 bosses down, and still 19 minutes to go. But I do decide to chain this Crusher into this next pull, so that's what you're seeing here. Really, there's nothing the only thing we have to dodge is the Ground Shatter. Everything else, outside of like the one Blind Rage from the Scrapper, is all we really need to pay attention to. Now, there's a little bit of a break here. Egg just had both of his cooldowns come up. I just had a survival come up, so we can pull a little bigger. But we also want to get a combat drop here because the rogues want to go and start the RP. So when you have a rogue or a druid in your group, it's super nice to be able to go and start the Harlan RP. Or not the Harlan RP, sorry. The Ring of Booty RP early because the pig eventually will get all tuckered out. What I mean by this, or if you haven't ever tried this before, but if you do the RP, start the pig, and like go do other things. If you go and kill trash, or you go up to Harlan and kill Harlan first and come back, the pig is basically standing still. So all of your group members can click on the pig at the exact same time, to instead of like chasing it around for, you know, a minute, because my group tends to have to chase the pig around for a minute. So we like to have that little safety net for us to just all be able to click. Now again, pretty dangerous pull here because of the tides. We're not able to CC. I'm not really able to kite effectively. I'm now being slowed as well constantly, and shifting out of form is going to be extremely dangerous here. So once that tide goes down, it becomes a lot safer. We did recover there. Now if you look at the overall healing though for this pull, we did have to heal over 100,000 HPS to keep the group alive, myself and the group alive. So extremely dangerous pull here, and that's why we were waiting for cooldowns, waiting for both healing cooldowns and some of our offensive cooldowns as well. So we're trying not to roll bursting here. We got up to 3 stacks. The group's relatively low, but the pull was a success there. So again, wild growthing to help get the group topped off, and we are going to then run into the ring of booty. Now the pig is running around at like full speed. This is when we can't click the pig effectively, so we're going to keep clearing trash until the pig kind of slows down a little bit here. We're going to pull the crusher and a few of these shipmates and deckhands on the side now. Yes, they are yellow mobs. Yes, they are pretty easy to kill, and yes, they do give percentage. They give anywhere between like 0.3 and 0.8%, so killing all of these guys will give you a fat like 2 or 3%, which does total up at the end of the dungeon. So it's like one less pull, and as close to 100% as we get. So that's why I'm pulling these yellows. A lot of groups do pull these yellows. They don't have any mechanics besides meleeing, so there's nothing you really have to worry about. The only thing I'm worried about in this pull is the crusher, but because the yellows are not elites and they're not really hitting me that hard, the only thing I really have to be concerned about is this crusher. So do a little parkour here and then jump back down and get on this crusher. Now the pig is slowing down, as you can see in the background there. He stopped for much. What I mean by he's like slows down is not that he runs slower, but he stops and stays there more frequently. So he's just sitting in the middle right there, and then he runs off. He's going to sit here for a little bit and then I think run off again. I'm going to get a quick reset on this enchanted, if I'm not mistaken, and then we are going to go and try to do the pig. Oh wait, no, my group did it without me. So now the pig's starting to speed up again, and we're trying to click him, and we got him pretty fast there. That's typically unusual and probably the only reason we timed this key. So just something to keep in mind is making sure you start that RP and go back and continue clearing trash. So again, we're going to pull this trash here. Eld's going to handle the enchanted while I can focus on keeping myself alive and mitigating properly, and then egg as well. So again, healers really shouldn't do the enchanted unless they're comfortable in the situation. Yes, rest of druids are really good at it. They can do it in lower keys. They have Ursol's Vortex in their toolkit, which allows them to spend 1 global to hold it back for like 4 or 5 globals worth. But in a higher key like this, and there needs to be attention from the healer to the tank, or from the healer to the group to keep people alive, a DPS should be using their toolkits, or the tank should be using their toolkit to keep that enchanted away. We are going to chain this pull. Bursting is going to go off a little bit, but I'm trying to kite back because the pat is coming up the hill and we want to make sure everything goes off. Now, a Shattering Bellow got off there, plus 4 stacks of bursting, so we all dipped pretty low, but we recovered pretty quickly. I had Incarnation proc, so now I'm sitting super comfortably, and Egg's able to catch everyone back, else back up. These pulls aren't too difficult. Without Eudora, or when Eudora is on your side, like without casters, these pulls are day and night. Not having to do like a crazy amount of kicks, being able to focus on just like kind of pumping out damage and just raw healing instead of like having to worry about like dodging things, kicking things, like magical damage, dispelling and stuff like that. It's so much nicer. Now I did get stuck under the stairs there. That was a pro move. I was trying to run up the stairs and swiftman myself and then jump off, you know, hardcore parkour, but I got stuck underneath and got hit by volcanic. So take notes. And then the sappers go down, and then we're going to be going into Ludwig von Tortollen. So this guy's going to be pretty beefy on Fortified Weeks. I am going to try to get a pre-pot here if someone didn't pull early. So we did pot. I think most of the DPS potted here, and we're going to be using a fair bit of cooldowns just to get this guy down. He does hit. It's weird. Like, he hits really hard, and then he'll hit, like, he won't hit you at all for a bit. So it's pretty easy to recover. If you start taking a lot of damage, don't stress, because he probably won't kill you if you have mitigation up. So again, like, I'm dipped down to like 100k. I pop a frenzied, and the, egg, throws up a holy shock, and I'm pretty much sitting fine for a little while. Just making sure that we're dodging these shells and rotating the boss around the room appropriately so the DPS don't have to dodge as many shells. I'm really bad at this. I know the concept, but I I like bullying my rogues because they bully me all the time. So we're going to kind of just muscle our way through this guy. He has a huge health pool of 13.5 mil on a 20, which is outrageous, but it's much easier than having, Sky Captain Craig one-shot you. So at this point, I guess I could talk about my build a little bit. I have leaned away from I'm leaning a lot towards an offensive build instead of a hybrid build that I've mentioned before in previous commentaries. I am currently only running in this run particularly, I am running a double Twisted Claws, a Ysera's Gift, or not a Ysera's Gift, sorry, a Waking Dream, plus a Iron Fur. And then we are also running a Power of the Moon trait. So this is going to give me better overall periodic damage on my Moonfire, which ends up being most of my damage anyways. So we're kind of going for this like agility AoE single target stack. Oh, and then a Wild Flesh running as well. So the only defensive trait that I arguably have is Waking Dream, which is a resto trait. And then my layered main. My layered main is giving me agility, so it acts as both an offensive and a defensive trait. So I'm really trying to stack agility and really do as much damage as possible. So my damage has gone up because of this, but my survivability has gone a little bit lower outside of survival instincts. But again, it's not really too much of an issue because Incarn procs with Vision of Perfection as a major is like insane. It's 15% armor plus like spammable taunt plus thrash plus mangle hitting 3 targets and a spammable mangle as well. So it's really great for single target, it's really great for AoE, it's good for survivability, especially in dungeons like this. And that's why this week was so easy for Guardian Druid, especially on a Freehold, is because in this dungeon particularly, Incarn procs, I'm basically not going to die. Like, I can, yes, but I'm probably not going to. Now, at this point again, Egghead to AFK once more. So we're kind of just waiting around. The rogues are, trying to roll the bones and stuff and get not bad procs. And we're just waiting for Egg to do this fight. So that's why I say we could have probably been close to a 2 chest, because we did spend about a minute or so of downtime waiting for him. Now it was fine because cooldowns were coming back up. People were able to roll. We were able to lax this key a little bit more. But it was just unfortunate that Egg did have to AFK. But obviously, if that happens, it's nothing you can really do about it. People have lives. Lives are worth living. So this boss is pretty easy to tank. It's not too difficult. Like, there's a lot of downtime, unfortunately, so normally damage is pretty low, but because Guardian Druid's toolkit allows them to off-heal so much, I do spend a lot of the time, whenever he's doing his Sharknado, I spend time throwing out rejuves and regrowths and wild growths on the group, and Swiftmends and all that fun stuff. So you see me do it on that last one, you're going to see me do it on almost everyone, just because I really don't have anything else to do. I don't have extended range like the rogues do on my melee attack, so I kind of have to just sit out. It's nice having a hunter in the group because they do such a great job at kiting these sharks. Eld likes to call them cute little nicknames and flirts with them, which makes me uncomfortable, but I'm not going to tell him that. But then making sure DPS and tanks should not be between the boss and the sharks after that Sharknado, because he'll always charge. So basically, always have your back facing the wall and have him facing you. And then the rogues can kind of sit on either side as necessary. So this boss is pretty easy. You're going to just kind of kite around the room as seen fits. Sometimes sharks will be thrown to melee. Sometimes they'll be thrown to the tank like you just saw right there. Basically, kite the boss because the boss is kiting your DPS, and the DPS then can kite the shark. So it's kind of like making a little train. Eld is going to do his best during this fight, and so is Egg, to try to pick up the sharks and bait them away from melee, just so melee can kind of stand. Being a hunter is extremely nice because he can always move and cast at the same time. So sharks are nothing for him. You can kind of see him just dancing around the shark there, spamming Cobra Shot. This boss, again, without hero, is going to go down not as fast as we like with 20 mil. Pretty deep health pool, but we're not going to hero here because we're going to just save it for Harlan. It wasn't up quite yet on this boss, and we figured we're only going to have one more hero, so might as well use it on a boss that we can kind of just absolutely blow up. So again, Sharknado's going out. The melee are max ranging and trying to get their melee hits in, dodging the shark. I'm going to continue off healing, and that's pretty much the fight. It's a very simple fight. Sometimes I like to do this fight last. I like to do Harlan third, but because of just the timing in this key, it was actually just more convenient for us to come right here. So that's what I like about Freehold. Freehold is a very like malleable dungeon. You can kind of go whatever way you want. You can pull whatever kind of trash you want, whatever your group is good at handling. I've seen some groups pull a lot of trash in the beginning and just like constantly do skips throughout. I've seen some groups do it vice versa, where they skip like everything in the beginning and do a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of trash throughout the dungeon. Some groups like to skip this. Some groups like to do a lot of this trash up the hill. Now, we're going to be using Painful Motivation to our advantage here. I'm going to run in, get a kick on the Lightning Bolt, get everything nice and piled up, and I'm going to start rolling my Survival Instincts just to make sure that Painful Motivation goes on as much as possible. We get pretty lucky here. There are ways to bait the Painful Motivation to go on everything. So Painful Motivation will always go on 3 targets, and there's 6 targets. So ideally, you can split this into kind of like 2 pulls in a way by pulling one guy over to the bridge and making sure the Painful Motivations go off. This is typically done by another class using defensives and tanking the other group until Painful goes off. But like, because of how easy this week is, I'm just able to pull everything together and just wait for Painful to go off. Though, as you did see there was an overlap with Painful Motivation where one of the guys did not get it, but we're already doing damage. It's just one guy and it's not an issue. So pulling the boss with 2 AFKs already so far this dungeon with 7 minutes left, 7.5 minutes left. As long as we don't wipe here, it's pretty much clean. Harlan Sweet's relatively a joke. During phase 1, the healer should be able to do a lot of damage. Tanks, if played properly, can basically keep themselves up. Most tanks are very like self-sufficient or self-efficient, sufficient, same thing, I think. And then during phase 2 is when you're going to kind of need a little bit more attention, or the group's going to need more attention. And then the last phase, you typically want to roll big cooldowns. So as you see here, as Barrage comes out, I'm actually going to walk with the player who is being targeted as long as it's not Eld, because everyone else is in melee and we want to maximize uptime. So Cannon Barrage comes out, and I'm going to walk with Egg. Now, Egg's not so much important, not him as a person. He's probably the most valuable player on our team, but I'm going to walk with, just as a healer, he's not doing as much DPS as other classes, so it's fine if he has to go out, but just making sure you're pulling Harlan Sweet with the DPS is just going to make them not complain the whole time. So Keeler's going to do his best to try to stack these here and then fail miserably, which is alright. He tried his best. We're going to just then keep rotating back from corner to corner on this little like dock platform. This is a very, very common strat. Just be super careful on these knocks, especially during his second phase. If anyone sitting in range can get knocked into the trash behind, which will pretty much cause a wipe unless you're maybe on a low key and you're super overgeared. But for the most part, if you pull that trash on top of Harlan, you probably will wipe without like hero and like a lot of coordination and defensives. So at 30% is then when he'll hit phase 3, which he'll then be taking double damage. This is typically a good time to use your cooldowns if they're up, or big damaging abilities. For me personally, I actually go on the offense in phase 3. I kind of pop Survival Instincts and I just keep hitting Mangle and Maul as much as possible. I kind of stop mitigating because Frenzied is, first off, extremely powerful of a heal, so I'm not really too worried about the self-healing and keeping myself alive through his melee attacks. Plus, you get a fair bit of downtime between like barrages and him doing his little saber attack. It's really not hard. Like, you have like, there's like pivot moments in the fight where you don't have, like, you're not taking any damage, so there's no really stress at all. So it's simply just kind of putting as much damage. Incarnation does proc. I'm spamming Mangles, I'm spamming Thrashes, and my Moonfires are even hitting for like 15k, which is awesome. So again, kiting with the DPS is going to make or break that kind of difference here. It just helps overall. 2 DPS when splat. It's not because they're bad, it's because they're dumb. So I love these guys. So key is complete with just about 4 minutes left. Not too bad of a run, especially with AFKs and being some of the first 20s we were attempting this week. This was an extremely easy week, especially in higher keys. If you guys have any questions about my build or different pulls and routes, feel free to message me. I love kind of theory crafting about that stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys in the next one.